So, what might you ask? Do calving time and newborn calves have to do with the story and the future of Saskatchewan? Well, that's what I'd like to talk about today. My name is Alan Friesen, and I want to thank you for showing up to my new channel, which I've named The Long View from Saskatchewan. Now, I named it this because looking out from our dining room window, I can literally see 4 miles out into the distance across the prairies. Some 25 years ago now or so, my young family and I returned to our farm from living for a time in South America. And when we came back to the family farm at that time, I realized in my heart that if it wasn't for this place called Saskatchewan, I would really have no reason to return to the country of Canada. And so for some time, I've been thinking of doing a video series on everything Saskatchewan. Like, what is it that makes us unique as a culture? What is it that qualifies us to be considered a nation different in every aspect from the provinces and the states and the territory that surround us? I want to get into all things Saskatchewan, the past, the present, the future. But for today, I'd like to just talk for a few minutes about calving time and newborn calves. Now, I'm not sure if you have had the opportunity to be blessed with having to participate in calving season here in Saskatchewan, but I have to tell you that when I think of calving time, I think of that moment in time when the calf is already out of its mama, so that difficult part is done, but yet it's not yet breathing. And so that's that moment in time when everything's being held by a thread, and the farmer, the rancher, is thinking like, is the good Lord going to give this calf the breath of life, or is He going to take it away? And so, as farmers and ranchers, we do everything in our power to help that calf to start breathing. We maybe take the junk out of its mouth, or we stick a wheat straw up its nose so that it sneezes, and that way can get some gasps of breath. And looking at our story as a province, I have to think that sometimes our story has been like that calf that's gasping for breath and just trying to get life, but not getting very far. And I think, for example, the 1930s, which I'm sure of course, you've heard of, but it was a horrendous time of years of drought and summers that were so hot. I'm sure you heard that, for example, on when was it? On July 5th, 1937, when the thermometer hit 113 degrees Fahrenheit, so 45 degrees Celsius in the towns of Yellowgrass and Mydale. And that's records that haven't been broken yet to this day. I guess global warming was a little bit worse back then, obviously, than it is today. But all of that heat in the summers and the drought led to crop failures. Added to that, it was the middle of the Depression, so there were no jobs, and people were just giving up hope. They were pulling up stakes and they were moving on, or even if they were farmers, they were taking their cattle and horses and just driving them north into the northern grain belt, where at least there was a little more rain and there was some wood for firewood and maybe to build a cabin or whatever. And I think too about the 1980s as another example. Now I was able to experience those, and the 1980s were pretty brutal. Interest rates were up to 20%, and people here in Saskatchewan were losing their homes and their farms. Added to that, the commodity prices were bad, and once again, they were dry years, and so people were really they were giving up hope. They were pulling up stakes and moving on to green pastures. Then there's other times in the story of our great province when it was more like that calf that comes out of its mama, and not only comes out on its own without any help, but within an hour it's up and it's jumping around, and it's found its mom, and it's started to suck without any help from the farmer rancher. And I think sometimes our story here in Saskatchewan has been like that. I think, for example, of the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, as they call it, right? And so many things were happening in our province. They were building roads between villages and towns, and people were buying motorized vehicles to travel on those roads. And on the farms, they were building these new hip roof barns that stand to this day in many cases. 100 years later, they stand as a testimony to that great time. And in the towns and villages, people were maybe affording the luxury of going out fishing on a Saturday afternoon, or maybe even building a little shack, a little cabin by the lake for the very first time. I think too of the 1950s, which was so I'm told an era of so much hope and optimism. There were young families everywhere in our province, and it was still a time of the one-room schoolhouse, and these schoolhouses were just bursting at the seams with children. There were new inventions being tried out, and the biggest thing I think in our province back then was electrification. It was coming not only to the cities and the towns and the villages, but it was reaching the farms all over the province. And you've maybe heard of Miss Penny Powers, who would go from community to community, and she would tell the people who had gathered, mostly women in the community, about all the amazing things they could do with this electricity that they now had, besides just turning on a light bulb. But now here we are. And in the year of our Lord 2026, we tend to ask ourselves a similar question, right? Like, what does this year and the years to come have in store for us? Like, are they going to be like the 30s and 80s, or are they going to be more like the 20s and the 50s? Well, I, for one, think that the sky's the limit. No, or how do we say here in Saskatchewan, the living sky's the limit for the future of this great land that we call Saskatchewan. I mean, we've got rich soils to produce our agricultural products. We've got an overabundance of natural resources. We've got a strong manufacturing sector. We've got an educated population that translates into an educated workforce, right? We've got tried and true post-secondary institutions like, for example, our polytechnical schools or our universities that have been in the forefront of research and development for so many decades now. And you add that all together and you get so much hope and potential for the future. And I think often that all we need is really strong leadership. And besides that, a grand vision for what this nation of Saskatchewan could become. So in the weeks ahead, I would like to take us, you and me, on this journey of everything Saskatchewan, from the past to the present, as I mentioned, and on to the future, thinking about our culture and our politics and our economics to see where is it that the future is taking us. So if this is a journey that you'd like to come on with me, I would encourage you to give me a like to this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below. Like, what do you think it is that is driving the hope and optimism in our great land called Saskatchewan right now? So next week, I think we need to tackle an important question, and that is, what is it in our culture that makes us unique enough that we can consider ourselves a nation culturally speaking? So until then, I hope you have a great week, and I will see you then again next week. And until then, I just want to say, stay Saskatchewan and stay free. Talk to you next time.